It's been a year since my father passed away, and although the pain still lingers, we've slowly begun to heal. My mother, who was deeply sorrowed by his death, has finally started to smile again. The warmth in our home was returning, until my husband's actions brought chaos. Your mother approved, so it should be fine, Greg said calmly. I was shocked. How could he think everything was okay? This is our home. Why should we sacrifice our space for your family? I hadn't known that Greg had invited his parents, who were living with his brother and sister-in-law, to move into our house. Worse, he had gone ahead and cleared out my late father's room without my permission. The room had remained untouched since his death, a small tribute to his memory. Now, it was gone. I couldn't believe what was happening. Our once peaceful home had become stifling. Greg's parents were now living with us, and their presence was overwhelming. My mother, once starting to recover, began going out more and more to avoid the discomfort at home. I knew I couldn't accept this situation. My name is Wendy, and this is the story of how my home was taken over by my husband's family after my father's death. My father's passing left a deep void. He had been a strict man, but Greg always found a way to make him smile. We lived harmoniously under one roof for nearly 10 years. My parents never interfered too much, allowing Greg and me the space we needed. But after my father's death, things changed, particularly with Greg. Despite having the entire third floor to ourselves, Greg started spending more time on the second floor, which was my mother's domain. "Why are you watching TV here?" I asked him one day. "This is my mom's space." "If your mom comes, I'll move," he said casually, but he never did. Day by day, he grew more comfortable there, often drinking and falling asleep in the living room. My mother, sensing the tension, began avoiding the second floor altogether. Conversations with Greg became rare, and when they did happen, they often turned into arguments. One evening, after returning from shopping with my mother, we found my father's old study in complete disarray. All his belongings had been removed. In their place was a chest of drawers I'd never seen before, along with piles of cardboard boxes. I rushed upstairs, only to find Greg sitting with his parents, enjoying a drink. "What's going on?" I asked him, pulling him aside. His response was startling. "My mom's not getting along with my brother's wife, so I invited them to stay here," he said as if it were no big deal. "They're using the study now." My blood boiled. "How could you do this without telling me? What about my father's things?" "I threw them away. They were just in the way," he answered nonchalantly. My father's cherished possessions were gone, disposed of without a second thought. I yelled loud enough for everyone to hear, "Tell them to leave. Bring back everything you threw away." But Greg, in his usual calm manner, simply nodded. I knew deep down he had no intention of taking any real action. As I raised my voice in frustration, I suddenly felt a gentle tap on my shoulder. Turning around, I saw my mother standing at the stairs, her finger pressed to her lips, signaling for silence. She shook her head and softly said, "It's late, Wendy. Let them stay tonight." Her calmness in that moment baffled me. I wanted to push back, to demand that Greg and his parents leave, but my mother's quiet resolve disarmed me. Even as I tried to speak with Greg later that night, he avoided the conversation, using his parents' presence as an excuse. The next morning, the situation grew worse. I entered the living room and found Greg passed out drunk on the couch. Dirty dishes cluttered the table. Just as I was about to start cleaning up, my mother-in-law appeared, tossing some of her laundry at me. "Wendy, can you handle this too? You're such a great help, taking care of your family and your parents." "My other daughter-in-law never lifts a finger," she complained, clearly expecting me to do the extra work without question. "Does she really plan to stay here forever?" I thought to myself, feeling the weight of her words press down on me. This was the house my parents had built, the home we had shared. How could I accept their intrusion any longer? I tried to wake Greg, but he was too groggy from the night before. Defeated, I returned to our bedroom and made a call to Greg's brother, hoping he might offer a solution. "I've already heard about it from Greg," his brother said. "But I can't take them back. The situation with our mother and Amy is beyond repair." "Wait, what?" I asked, stunned. You're leaving all this to me? His response was cold. Yeah, you'll just have to deal with it. I'm sorry. The call ended abruptly, and I stood there, more alone than ever. No one was coming to help. Both Greg and his brother had cast their responsibilities onto me. I knew if I didn't act soon, Greg's parents would end up staying indefinitely. Later that day, I finally had a moment to myself, reflecting on my father's absence and the chaos Greg had brought into our home. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. My father's belongings, gone. My mother, forced to retreat to avoid conflict. And Greg, showing no regard for the life we had built here. That evening, as Greg opened the refrigerator, I seized the opportunity to confront him. Did you really get rid of Dad's things without asking us? I asked, my voice shaking with anger. How many times do I have to say it? Greg replied, exasperated. Yes, I threw them away. They were just in the way. In the way? I couldn't believe his indifference. This is our family's home. My mother and I wanted to keep those things. You can't just decide these things on your own. But Greg wouldn't listen. He brushed off my protests, acting as if it was a simple difference of opinion. I had almost given up expecting any empathy from him. Our conversations had dwindled to nothing, and I could feel the distance between us growing wider by the day. I called your brother, I said firmly. Greg's expression shifted to one of surprise. Why? He asked cautiously. I asked him to come pick them up. This is our family's home, and your parents can't stay here any longer. Greg's face darkened. Are you bullying my parents now? He accused, raising his voice. There's nowhere else for them to go. I shot back. What about your brother's house? Why not send them there? They can't go back, he snapped. Then they need to find another place, I responded. This house was built by my parents. Greg cut me off before I could finish. You always talk about it like it's only your parents' house. But don't forget, it's my home too. His words stung. He wasn't wrong. My parents had always refused to take rent from Greg and me, insisting that we save for the future instead. But this house was more than just bricks and mortar. It held memories of my father, of the family we had been before Greg's selfishness disrupted our peace. As I stood there, lost in thought, my mother returned from her bedroom. She must have overheard our argument because she spoke up quietly. If they have nowhere else to go, Wendy, let them stay a little longer, at least until they find a place, she said softly. Greg's parents are family too. Greg's face lit up. See, even your mother understands, he said, his tone full of smug satisfaction. But my mother wasn't finished. But, she continued, turning to Greg, you'll need to start looking for a new place for them. They can't stay here forever. Greg agreed, though I could hear the hesitation in his voice. I doubted his sincerity. However, I had no choice but to trust my mother's decision. I would make sure they kept their promise this time. 3 days later, a phone call changed everything. Yes, that's right, I said, excitement bubbling up inside me. Are you sure? I had contacted a junk removal service in a last-ditch effort to find out what had happened to my father's belongings. To my surprise, they had been stored and were safe. Without a moment's hesitation, I arranged for them to be moved to a storage facility. But just as I prepared to share the news with my mother, I noticed something strange. She wasn't in her bedroom. After searching the house, I found her upstairs in the living room. To my shock, my mother-in-law was there, visibly intoxicated in the middle of the day, with Greg and his father lounging nearby. My mother-in-law smiled drunkenly. Wendy, what's up? I had had enough. Why aren't your parents moving upstairs, Greg? This is my mom's space. Because their legs hurt, Greg replied, irritated. Why doesn't your mom move upstairs? I was at my breaking point. My mother was practically being pushed out of her own home to accommodate Greg's parents. This couldn't go on. And as I looked around the cluttered, messy living room, I realized something. My mother had been retreating to internet cafes to avoid being in her own home. It hit me like a wave. She was doing this for me, hiding her discomfort to keep the peace. But I couldn't let this continue. Later that evening, I approached my mother quietly. Mom, I've rented a storage space for Dad's things, I told her, handing her the key. We'll move everything back once Greg's parents are gone. My mother smiled sadly and placed a hand on my shoulder. Wendy, don't mistreat his parents. I don't know how long I'll be here, and after I'm gone, you might need their support. Her words stung, but I shook my head. Mom, I'm considering a divorce. For the first time, my mother's expression shifted to one of surprise. She sighed, carefully studying the divorce papers I had brought home. You should do what you think is right, she finally said. The next morning, I handed the divorce papers to Greg. So, you're serious, he said, trying to brush it off. Fine, let's divorce. But I'll sell the house. That's impossible, I replied calmly. The house had been transferred into my name, a fact Greg hadn't bothered to consider. He was speechless. His final insult, about how he could have had children if he hadn't married me, didn't affect me anymore. I was ready to move on. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. My mother cheerfully called out to Greg as movers entered the house. His parents' belongings were being packed and sent back to his brother's house. Greg was in a panic, rushing downstairs, but it was too late. My mother had arranged everything. You did things your way, she told Greg, referencing his thoughtless disposal of my father's items. Now it's my turn. As Greg frantically tried to stop the movers, the TV came on, broadcasting a local news segment. It showed our house. Greg's face turned pale as he realized the story was about us. My mother had posted about the situation on social media, and it had gone viral. Reporters had begun investigating, and now Greg had no choice but to face the consequences. He left the house soon after, submitting the divorce papers and taking his things with him. Finally, after months of turmoil, the house was quiet once more. My mother and I returned my father's cherished items to their original place. Peace was restored, and though I know the future may hold challenges, I'll face them with strength. This house, filled with memories of my parents, is more than just a home. It's a symbol of everything I hold dear, and I'll protect it with everything I have.